The transport ship descended through the purple clouds and watched the alien world grow larger through the... His stomach felt tight. He was the first human to be selected for the Empire's military academy, a chance that Earth did not get often. His entire species depended on him doing well. Had served in the Earth Navy for 10 years. He knew weapons, tactics, and how to survive in difficult situations. But nothing in his training had prepared him for what he saw when he stepped out of the shuttle. The academy was massive, with towers that reached into the sky like silver needles. Soldiers from 100 different species moved through the corridors, and all of them seemed to belong there. Was the only human. A tall, blue-skinned officer approached him. Her name was Commander Kex of the species. She had 4 arms and eyes that glowed faintly green. She looked down with something that looked like pity. "You are the human, yes?" she asked. Her voice was cold and official. "We will try to make you useful. The Empire believes in giving all species a chance, no matter how primitive they are. Come with me." Followed her through corridors filled with alien soldiers. Some of them stared at him. Others turned away as if he was not worth their time, said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence was better than anger. Commander Kex showed him to his training quarters, a small room with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out over the academy grounds. She gave him his schedule and his uniform. Then she left without saying anything else. That evening went to the dining hall to eat. A male sat down across from him. They were made of crystal and they glowed with a blue light from inside their bodies. This one introduced himself as Lieutenant. He was friendly at first, asking about Earth and its background. "You have weapons on your world?" asked, genuinely curious. Decided to be honest. "Yes, we have cannons and electromagnetic weapon systems. They are very advanced." Made a sound that was like laughter. Other soldiers at nearby tables also began to laugh. Felt his face get hot, but he did not show his anger. Said, still laughing, "You mean you throw metal at enemies? That is what we did 1,000 years ago. We have energy shields now that can stop anything. Your primitive weapons would do nothing to our defenses. They would bounce off like throwing rocks at a mountain." More soldiers joined in the laughing, picked up his food, and finished eating quickly. He did not say anything back. He just watched and listened. That was his first lesson at the academy. The aliens thought Earth was nothing. The next morning, met with a human officer who was also at the academy. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Hill. She had arrived a few weeks before and worked in the Naval Division. She looked tired and frustrated. "They think we are jokes," she said quietly, sitting next to an empty corridor. "Everything we do is wrong. Everything they do is right. I heard some officers talking yesterday. They said Earth was selected for the recruitment program just to prove that even the weakest species can be trained. If we fail, Earth gets kicked out of the galactic community. We have to succeed. Our entire civilization is depending on us." Felt the weight of that responsibility. He was not just here for himself anymore. He was here for billions of people back on Earth who were counting on him. Training began the next day. Was put in a group with recruits from different worlds, but the tasks given to the humans were always the hardest. They were sent into simulations where they had to fight enemies with superior weapons and strength. They were given impossible missions just to see if they would fail. Other species got easier work. It was clear that the academy was testing if humans could survive at all. Did not complain. He worked harder than anyone else. He studied the alien species and their fighting methods. He watched how their weapons worked and how their shields protected them. He made notes about their weaknesses, even though he knew almost nothing yet. One evening, went to the Academy's technical library. He started reading about weapons technology across the galaxy. He read about energy shields and how they worked. He learned about quantum deflectors and plasma cannons. He read about tactics that alien species had used in wars thousands of years ago. He found something interesting in the archives. 1,000 years ago, an advanced civilization had been defeated by a primitive one. The advanced species had energy shields and advanced weapons, but the primitive species used simple kinetic weapons that the advanced shields could not handle. Read the entire report twice. He felt something click in his mind. 3 weeks later, had gathered information from every source he could access. He had studied the Academy's weapon specifications, talked to engineers, and read through decades of military records. Now he was ready to make his move. Requested a meeting with the Academy's weapons officers. He was given 1 hour on a Tuesday morning. He stood before 5 senior officers, including Commander Kex, and presented his findings about Earth's cannons. He explained the speed, the accuracy, and the kinetic energy of the weapons. He talked about how Earth had developed them because the harsh conditions of his world demanded practical, reliable weapons. The room filled with laughter before he even finished. Commander Keck stood up and spoke. "You want us to believe that throwing metal at high speed is a serious weapon? We use energy shields that have been perfected over 10,000 years. Your primitive cannons would not even scratch our defenses. We discovered energy weapons 1,000 years ago. We moved past kinetic weapons long before your species even left their caves." The other officers nodded and smiled. One of them, a tall being made of liquid metal, spoke up. "The human does not understand the difference between strength and weakness. A shield powered by quantum energy cannot be damaged by kinetic force. It is impossible. Science does not lie." Felt anger rise in his chest, but he forced it down. He was not finished. "I would like to request a live demonstration," he said. "I want to show you that technology is more effective than you believe. If I am wrong, then we will know. If I am right, then Earth's weapons can help protect the Empire." The officers exchanged looks. Some of them wanted to refuse, but one older officer who had not spoken yet raised his hand. "Let him try," the officer said. His name was Captain Horace, and he seemed to be the ranking officer in the room. "A demonstration cannot hurt. We will set up a mock structure protected by a standard shield. If the human's weapon cannot even damage the shield, then we will all see the truth. Proceed with your preparations." Commander Kex did not look happy, but she could not argue with a direct order from a superior officer. That evening met with the other human recruits. There was Casey Martinez, who worked as a navigator in the Academy's flight division. There was Lisa Grant, an engineer who had helped maintain some of the Academy's older equipment. And there was Sarah Hill, who brought news from the other military sections. "We are with you," Casey said immediately. "If you think you can prove that humans have value, then tell us what to do." Explained his plan. He had found something important in the archived military records. When an energy shield faced an unpredictable kinetic impact, it had to adjust its power and algorithms quickly. But there was a delay, just a few milliseconds. If you fired multiple rounds at the exact right timing, the shield could not adjust fast enough. The impacts would overwhelm the shield's power system. "But we need to modify said. We need to increase the velocity. We need to design a firing pattern that the shield algorithms cannot predict. We need to mimic something natural, something that the shield has never learned to handle." Lisa nodded. "I can work on the velocity increase. We have access to the Academy's equipment. I can modify the accelerators." Casey spoke up. "I can help with the targeting system. If we set it up right, we can program a pattern that looks random but is actually calculated. The shield will not be able to predict it." Sarah added, "I will make sure no one interferes with your work. I know officers in the security division. I can keep them looking the other way." For the next 5 days, the 4 humans worked in secret. Lisa spent hours adjusting the accelerators, increasing the velocity to nearly double what it had been before. Casey programmed new firing patterns that looked random but were actually precise calculations of impact timing and angle. Studied every piece of information he could find about energy shield algorithms. During the day, they trained like normal. They ran combat simulations. They attended classes. They pretended to be discouraged by their assignments. But at night, in the maintenance areas of the Academy, they worked on the modifications were risky. If they were discovered, and the others would be expelled from the Academy. Earth would lose its chance to join the galactic community. But the 4 humans knew that this was the only way to prove that their species had value. Meanwhile, the mockery from the alien recruits grew worse. In the dining hall one evening, Commander Kex challenged to a one-on-one combat exercise. Accepted, knowing he could not refuse without losing respect. The exercise took place in the training chamber before a crowd of watchers. Faced Kex, who was larger, stronger, and had 4 arms. She also had combat implants in her body that enhanced her strength and speed. The match lasted 4 minutes. Fought hard and used every technique he knew, but Kex defeated him easily. She threw him to the ground and stood over him with a smile that was not friendly. "This is why humans are weak," she announced to the crowd. "We are superior in every way. Your species should be honored to serve the Empire as workers, not as soldiers." Stood up ashamed and angry, but he said nothing. He had something else planned. He had something that would prove to all of them that Earth was not as weak as they believed. The first round traveled at 2,000 meters per second. It was pure kinetic force, a piece of metal moving faster than sound. When it struck the energy shield, something unexpected happened. The shield did not deflect the round. Instead, the impact created a small area of instability in the shield's power field. The round did not break through, but it forced the shield to adjust. Alarms started to sound from the shield generators. The alien observers leaned forward in their seats, still confident but now curious. Gave the second command without waiting. 3 rounds fired in rapid succession. Unlike energy attacks, which came in patterns that shield algorithms had learned to predict, these kinetic strikes came at irregular intervals. Each impact hit at a different angle. Each impact transferred massive amounts of energy that the shield had to absorb and process. The shield flickered. A blue light pulsed across the protective barrier. For the first time, the mock structure behind the shield became visible in a way it had not been before. Commander Keck stood up from her seat. Her eyes were wide. She was no longer confident. Did not stop. He had calculated exactly how many rounds he would need and in what order. He had spent 5 nights working through the mathematics with Casey and Lisa. Now the moment had arrived to prove if his theory was correct. "Fire the sequence," shouted. Casey activated the targeting system. 10 rounds left the modified cannons in a cascading pattern. The first 2 rounds came 1/10 of a second apart. The next 3 came in a different rhythm. The final 5 came in a pattern that mimicked the random impacts of falling meteorites during a planetary storm. Nothing was truly random, but nothing followed the patterns that shield algorithms had been programmed to recognize. Each round hit the shield. Each impact drained more power from the energy field. The shield system tried to adapt, but it was too slow. The algorithms were designed to handle energy weapons, not kinetic force. The shield technology had evolved to be perfect against what the galaxy knew how to throw at it, but it had never learned to handle Earth's way of war. The shield crackled with overload. A terrible sound, like breaking glass mixed with electrical explosion, filled the observation deck. The shield's protective field began to collapse. Gave one final command. The fired a single, perfectly aimed round directly at the center of the weakening shield. The round passed through a crack in the field that had opened just wide enough to let it through. The mock structure exploded in a burst of metal and fire and debris. Pieces of the target flew in all directions. The explosion was so powerful that it sent a shockwave through the observation deck, knocking some observers backward in their seats. Complete silence followed the explosion. The humans in the room who had helped prepare were smiling. Everyone else looked shocked. Commander Kex's 4 hands were clenched into fists. Her glowing green eyes stared directly at with an expression that could have been anger or could have been fear. Captain Horace stood up very slowly. He walked to the edge of the observation platform and looked down at the smoking remains of the mock structure. Then he turned to. "What did you do?" Horace asked. His voice was calm, but there was something different in his tone now. The casual disrespect was gone. Answered honestly. He explained the physics of kinetic impact. He explained how energy shields were designed to handle energy-based attacks and had weak points when faced with unpredictable physical force. He explained how he had discovered this by studying the ancient military records that showed a similar weakness in an older civilization. "Our world is harsh," said. "We learned to make weapons that are simple, reliable, and effective. We learned to think about physics differently because we had to survive. That is not weakness. That is adaptation, and adaptation is strength." Commander Kex walked down from the observation deck. Her 4 arms moved in a way that suggested she was trying to control her anger. She approached directly. "You somehow tricked the shield," she said. Her voice was harsh and accusatory. "You used some kind of forbidden technology or secret knowledge. Humans do not have the intelligence to develop something like this. You must have stolen the idea from another species." Met her gaze without looking away. "I did not steal anything. I used information that was available to everyone in the Academy's archives. I used mathematics and physics. I used the experience my people have from living on a world that tries to kill us every day. If that is cheating, then the Empire has forgotten what it means to be a warrior." The words hung in the air. Several of the alien officers looked uncomfortable. They whispered to each other. Captain Horace raised his hand and the whispers stopped. "The demonstration is concluded," Horace announced. "The human has shown that kinetic weapons have applications that we had underestimated. This will be investigated further. All participants in this demonstration will be questioned about the methods and equipment used. Commander Kex, take the human into custody for questioning. Do not harm him, but I want to understand exactly how he achieved this result. Was not worried about the questioning. He had done nothing illegal. He had used only equipment available to him. He had only applied knowledge that the Academy itself had provided in its libraries. But as soldiers took him away, he saw fear on the faces of the alien recruits who had mocked him. 3 days after the demonstration, was in the training chamber when the alarms began to sound. The alarms were different from the practice alarms. These were the alarms that meant real danger. Real enemies had attacked the Empire. The Dominion, a hostile force that had been growing stronger in the outer territories, had launched an assault on a settlement near the Academy planet. The settlement was home to 10,000 innocent civilians. The Academy command had to respond immediately, or the settlement would fall. Was told to gather his team for immediate deployment. They would be assigned to a secondary support role, far away from the main combat zones. The Academy command did not expect the humans to play any important part in the battle. Everyone still believed that Earth's recruits were weak and inexperienced. Casey, Lisa, and Sarah reported to the staging area where transport ships were being loaded with equipment. Sarah pulled aside for a moment. She was worried. "If you go out there and fail," she said quietly, "it will prove what they all think about us. If you go out there and die, Earth loses everything." "We are not going to fail," said. "And we are not going to die. We know something they do not know. We understand kinetic weapons. We understand how to fight without relying on energy shields. That is our advantage." The transport ship took its team to a position near the settlement. From their location, they could see the battle happening 5 kilometers away. The forces were using their normal tactics. Energy weapons fired at the fighters. Energy shields protected their defensive positions. But something was wrong. The shields were different from the standard shields. These new shields had been specifically designed to counter energy weapons. When the soldiers fired their plasma cannons and energy blasters, the shields absorbed the energy and used it to make their own defenses stronger. The forces were actually making the enemy stronger every time they attacked. Watched this through the scope of his cannon. He understood immediately what was happening. They had learned from tactics, the same way had learned from studying the Academy's archives. They had found a weakness and designed a counter to it. But they had never encountered Earth's weapons. They had no shields designed to stop kinetic force. Contacted the Academy command. He requested permission to move his team into active combat. The response came back quickly. The Academy command was desperate. The forces were losing ground. They told to do whatever he could, though they clearly expected little help from humans. His team moved into a valley that provided protection and a clear view of the positions. Casey programmed the targeting system. Lisa and 2 other human recruits named and prepared the cannons. When the forces advanced toward the settlement, gave the order to fire. The first volley of rounds traveled across the distance between the human team and the forces. The soldiers saw the rounds coming. They thought they were safe behind their shields. They had fought against energy weapons for weeks. They knew how to handle energy. They did not know how to handle kinetic force. The rounds struck the shields and passed directly through them. The shields could not stop or deflect what they did not understand how to process. Soldiers fell. Their shields flickered and died. The surprise was so complete that they did not even have time to counterattack before his team fired a second volley. The tide of the battle shifted completely. The forces, seeing that their enemy was suddenly vulnerable, began to push forward. They tried to retreat, but his team was positioned in the perfect location to stop them. Round after round, they fired. The advance turned into a collapse. His team destroyed 3 warships. They stopped a Dominion invasion force. They saved the settlement and 10,000 civilian lives. When the battle ended and they retreated, the Academy sent officers to retrieve his team. These officers were not the same people who had mocked humans just a week before. They were respectful. They were awed. They had watched humans save the Empire from defeat. And his team were transported back to the Academy. When they arrived, they found a very different scene than when they had left. The soldiers who had laughed at them were now staring at them with respect. Some looked ashamed. Others looked confused, as if their understanding of the world had broken and they were trying to put it back together. Commander Kex was waiting for in the main command corridor. Her 4 arms hung at her sides. She did not look angry anymore. She looked defeated. You have proven that humans are warriors, she said. I did not believe it was possible. I was wrong. Could have responded with anger. He could have pointed out how she had mocked him and challenged him and doubted him. But he chose a different path. He extended his hand, the way humans did to show respect and agreement. You are not the first to underestimate humanity, said. We come from a harsh world where W1 month after the battle received a message that he had been selected for an audience with Admiral. The Admiral commanded all military forces of the entire empire. She was ancient, and she had lived through 10,000 years of war and peace and politics. Few humans would ever get the chance to meet her. Reported to the Admiral's chambers, the room was enormous. Windows looked out onto the planet and further out into the vast emptiness of space. Admiral stood looking out at the stars. She was a being of pure light, a species so advanced that they could take any form they chose. She was tall and magnificent and terrible to look at. You are, she said without turning around, the human who changed the Empire's understanding of itself. I am just a soldier, replied. He was nervous, but he kept his voice steady. I did what any human would have done. I found a problem and solved it. Turned to face him, her eyes contained galaxies. Do you know why I created the recruitment program? She asked. I created it because I knew that my empire had become comfortable and complacent. We had perfect technology. We had perfect defenses. We had perfect understanding of how to wage war. And that is when we became weak. Comfort is the death of strength. I sent my officers out to find species that the galaxy called primitive, hoping that they would teach us things we had forgotten. I did not expect to find that truth so quickly, she continued. I did not expect that a species from a harsh would hold the key to understanding a weakness that nearly destroyed us. They almost defeated us because they understood energy weapons better than we did. But you understood something else. You understood kinetic force in a way that my people had forgotten. Listened, and he began to understand. The recruitment program had been designed to discover hidden strength. Earth had been chosen not because it was weak, but because there was something hidden inside humanity that the Empire needed to find. I have an offer for you, said. I want you to become a strategic advisor to the military. I do not want you to serve as a recruit anymore. I want you to help us rebuild our understanding of warfare. I want you to help us create a new kind of military that combines kinetic and energy weapons. I want you to show us how to think about problems the way humans think about problems. Accepted immediately. This was an opportunity that would change everything for Earth. The next weeks were a blur of meetings and planning. Worked with the Empire's top military engineers. He showed them how to design cannons that were superior to anything the galaxy had created before. He worked with strategic officers to show them how kinetic and energy weapons could work together, each one covering the weaknesses of the other. Meanwhile, also worked to establish direct communication between Earth's government and the Empire. Sarah Hill became the liaison officer for all contact between the two civilizations. New trade agreements were created. Earth would export technology and the knowledge of how to create and use kinetic weapons. In return, Earth would receive advanced medical technology, energy systems, and manufacturing techniques that would transform human civilization. The other human recruits were no longer ignored. Casey Martinez was promoted to commander of a new division dedicated to kinetic weapons research. Lisa Grant became the chief engineer for the integration of Earth technology with systems. And the other humans who had fought in the battle were given leadership positions and the respect that they had earned. Most importantly, the way that aliens treated humans changed completely. The mockery ended. The disrespect stopped. Humans were now seen as equals, as warriors who had valuable knowledge and skills. Young recruits from other species began asking to study under human officers. The Empire sent scientists to Earth to learn about physics and survival tactics. One evening, walked through the academy with Commander Kex. The alien with 4 arms and glowing green eyes had become a friend and colleague. They passed by the training chambers where human and alien recruits worked together, sharing knowledge and preparing for a shared future. I owe you an apology, Kex said as they walked. I dismissed your entire species as primitive. I was arrogant and foolish. I had been taught that advanced technology meant advanced understanding, but I was wrong. Your people had something that my people had lost. You had the ability to see problems that we could not see. You had the courage to try solutions that we would never have considered. We are not so different, said. Your species created amazing things. We just looked at the same problem from a different angle. That is all strength is sometimes, just a different way of seeing things. They reached to that showed Earth. The blue planet hung in the darkness of space, beautiful and alive. Billions of humans lived on that world, most of them not knowing how close their civilization had come to being dismissed and forgotten. "Your world looks fragile," Keck said. "It is not fragile," replied. "It made us strong. Every storm, every flood, every dangerous creature, every harsh winter taught us something about survival. Earth raised us to be adaptable and creative and stubborn. It raised us to never give up, no matter how difficult things become. That is what the Empire needed to remember." Thought about the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the mockery and the disrespect. He thought about the long nights working on the modifications with Casey and Lisa and Sarah. He thought about the moment when the shield collapsed and the world changed forever. Earth was no longer the forgotten species. Humans were no longer dismissed as primitive. A few humans who refused to accept mockery and who found strength in their own heritage had shown the entire galaxy that every civilization had something valuable to teach. Every species had knowledge that others needed. Every world, no matter how harsh or how small, could produce warriors and thinkers and leaders. Stood looking at the stars with his alien friend beside him. Somewhere out there, the Empire was being rebuilt into something stronger and better. Somewhere on Earth, people were learning that their children and soldiers had changed the course of history. And everywhere in the galaxy, aliens were beginning to understand that underestimating humans would be the biggest mistake they could ever make. "We learned to survive against odds that should have killed us. We learned to think differently because we had to. I am not angry at you. I am just glad you can see the truth now." Kex looked at its extended hand for a moment. Then she reached out one of her 4 arms and grasped it. It was an alien gesture meeting a human gesture, but the meaning was the same. Respect, understanding, the beginning of something that could become friendship. News of the battle spread throughout the Empire within hours. The species that everyone had thought of as primitive savages had just become the saviors of an empire. Earth's military reputation transformed from mockery to respect, from weakness to strength, from nothing to something very important. That night was in a secure room being questioned by officers. They wanted to know everything about his methods, told them the truth. By morning, the entire academy knew that Earth's cannons were not primitive weapons. They were weapons that the galaxy's finest military minds had overlooked. Was sent back to his quarters, not arrested. The academy was in confusion. Officers argued with each other about what the demonstration meant. Some wanted to dismiss it. Others wanted to study it further. A few, hoped, were beginning to understand that they had made a serious mistake in underestimating humanity. The day of the demonstration arrived. Stood before the Academy command, before the alien recruits, and before visiting officers from the Empire. The mock structure stood behind a protective shield, just like any important military installation. Commander Kex watched from the observation deck, confident that would fail. Took a deep breath. He gave the order to fire the first round. Knew that used kinetic energy, the same kind of energy that was in the ancient report. He knew that Earth's understanding of physics on a harsh was different from what the aliens knew. Maybe, thought, the aliens had a weakness they did not even know about. He decided not to tell anyone about this yet. It was too early. He needed more information. He needed to understand the shields better. He needed to talk to the other human recruits and see if they had ideas. The next day, walked past Commander Kex in a training corridor. She barely looked at him as she passed, but was not discouraged anymore. He had seen a possibility, a small crack in the wall of alien superiority. He did not yet know if he could break through that wall, but he was going to try. Earth's future depended on it.